Welcome to the Franchisee Wisdom Podcast. Today we have another amazing guest, but I'm going to let him tell you all about him. So let's go ahead and get started. Hello, Mr. Jesse Kaiser. How are you doing today?
Doing wonderful. It's a great summer day, not too hot, not too cold. And I live in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm a franchisee currently of Sport Clip Haircuts and OxyFresh Carpet Cleaning. In my younger years, I also was a multi-unit operator, owner of Little Caesars Pizza and Valpak Marketing.
Wow, okay. So let's go ahead and start with going a little bit further back and before March of 2005. Let's say 2004, before you even started in franchising. What was your background? Like, did you go from school to that? Like, how do you, before
Yeah.
you became a franchisee, what's your history before that?
So I've had a bit of a charmed life. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth by any means, but while I was at college, I joined a fraternity and I kind of I had a reputation about me as a go-getter and pretty aggressive with goals and ambition. And some alumni that I never went to school with, they're like 10 plus years older than me. They had started a new technology company. And I remember them coming to the fraternity house and recruiting me to come work there. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'll work there. I'm like, I'm finishing up school, but I can work when I'm not in class. And they're like, great, we'll work around you. So that was the summer after my junior year of college, and then I had another year of college. And so I worked, and then as soon as I graduated, I toyed around with the idea of grad school for about 6 weeks and realized I was making more money than my professors, and I wanted to hop out of that and go full time. So it was basically the .com era. I mean, I worked with them from 1997 to 2005 when I started Little Caesars as a franchisee.
So you were in
So
technology then. You started with
yeah,
tech.
so I did everything other than the actual hard coding. So anything from payroll, sales management, training, product development, you name it. I did it because I was employee number 13 ever for the company. And the company grew and became bigger, and I was able to make great money because I was on the sell side of it. And I did a majority of the sales, or majority of the sales came through my pipeline. So, I was getting anywhere from 15 to 20% of the top line of the sales of a technology company. So for several years, I was doing much better even than the owners, just because of the way it was positioned. So most salespeople will take those big commission checks, go buy a nice big house, buy nice fancy cars. And for some reason, I just said, hey, my base salary is this. Put this in this account. All my commissions go in this other account that I never look at. And I did that for about 2 or 3 years and I had enough money to start my Little Caesars. So
Wow. Okay, that's pretty amazing that you were in the technology, you were right there in the middle of the boom. Obviously, that's where the top come
well,
era
I was in the
everything was
boom and then when the bust, right? So majority of my time was from, 97 to 2005. So 2000 when the bust happened. So the next 4 years are the 4 years I made the most money too. Part of it was we were a subscription-based model when at that time everything was an ad-based model, meaning the end user never paid, like Facebook. Facebook right now, you don't pay for Facebook. You get to use it because you get to see ads. And that was what the natural convention of thinking was. That's how the internet's going to be monetized. And so, and I was selling to public education who that have limited budgets. So when they can get free, they'll take free for sure. So I immediately had to sell against free, and I had to create value and why you wanted to pay an annual subscription for software, which we do that now with Listen 360 or Microsoft 360 and other things. But I can tell you in 2000, the idea of subscribing to software was so foreign to somebody that they were used to a CD. I own it. Give me the key. I'll make as many copies and share it with my friends as I want illegally. I mean, that was the mindset back then. So it required a unique marketing, and you had to create value in such a way that people were willing to pay for something that they could get otherwise for free.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wow. So you were doing so well doing that. So why franchising?
Well, that's an interesting thing. I wanted to be an owner of that company, like one of the partners. And it was their prerogative. They didn't need any more partners, so why would they do that? So I started looking around. We were originally going to open up or buy an existing pizzeria because we were living in a college town. So pizza is big in college towns. And I even had my brother working there, who's my business partner now, working there just to learn the insides and outsides and find out how much they were really making and what the profitability was. And one of my three bosses, or the three owners of the company I worked for, said, "You should never do that. You need to buy a franchise." I'm like, "Well, what's a franchise?" And he's like, "They're going to teach you how to run a business." And I'm really grateful for that, because I could tell you we probably would be running one of the very best pizzerias in the nation, but we'd probably be one location,
Right,
because
right.
that was just you. One of the things about franchising is you get to stack yourself against other people doing similar things, right? And there's organizations out there for like pizza as example, but it's still not the same because your recipe is a little bit different. Your need for labor usage is different because of your recipes being could be complex or could be super simple. So it's never really apples to apples. It's apples and oranges. With franchising, when you're dealing with your exact same brand in another market, it's apples to apples. And so you get to learn real quick what's working, what's profitable, what's not. Also, you're around people that are opening multiple locations. So when you see someone that you're like, hey, they're my equal, they're on my level, and they've got 5 locations and I've got one, I'm thinking the next 4 shouldn't be that hard to do, right? So then the mind expands and you say 5 is the new number. And then you get the 5 and you start meeting the guys that have 10. And you're like, 10's the new number, right? So
So right off the bat, you already were thinking, I am going to be a multi-unit franchisee. Your thought was not just getting one. You figured, okay, you get one, but eventually you wanted to build that enterprise.
well, yeah, and let's just be frank. So this is like 2004 numbers. I was making 180,000 a year. I was going to need a couple Little Caesars because I'm
Right.
splitting it with my brother, right? So we were gonna, right away, we were going to need multiple just to get me back to where I was making what I was doing before. So we just knew the economics required us to be multi-unit operators.
Absolutely. It's funny because that's one of the things that I tell people. One unit is a job and a, middle, salary job, really, not an average, white collar job, let's say, right?
Right.
And so, but if you want to really have the time and financial freedom, you have to go multi-unit. And
Oh,
that's how you
absolutely.
start duplicating, triple, quadruple, it's exponent, as you grow, you just continue to just double and increase in your profitability. And if you had, like you said, a partner, now is you had to replace both of your salaries, like you said. And so definitely is the multi-unit was already from the very beginning, the thought process. So can you tell me, so between, leaving the technology company and knowing that you're going to go into, somebody tells you about franchising, how do you choose Little Caesars? How do you find that? What other things did you consider? Were you looking
Sure.
at other brands, and how, yeah, how do you actually end up with Little Caesars?
Yeah, actually, Little Caesars was not even on my radar. We grew up in a rural market that never saw Little Caesars ever. And, after 2000, almost all, let's say 80% or more closed over a couple of years. So there was none in our market. There was communities that used to have one up to 7 years ago, but there wasn't anything like that. So we were looking at another brand. They're actually like the seventh largest. It's called Hungry Howie's. And we went through their discovery day. We went through the process. We were granted to be a franchisee. And then last minute, they call us and said, "Hey, we can't let you open up a location in Carbon, Illinois. We had a distribution deal fall through because there was going to be a multi-unit franchisee in the St. Louis market, and he's decided to not do pizza. So we can't truck you the commissary, the groceries from Detroit." And in the same breath, he's like, "But you can open up in Indiana or Ohio, and there's 5 stores right now that you can buy in those states that could get you up and running right now." So it wasn't that they didn't want to do business with Jesse; it was a logistics thing, right? So at the ripe age of like 26, I thought that Carbon, Illinois was the center of the universe, and that's where I had to start my business. And so I just got on the internet and Googled pizza franchises, and I heard all these concepts I'd never heard of. And then I saw the little toga guy and Little Caesars, and I said, "They're still in business? Okay, what's going on?" And I said, "I just need a recipe, and I need a brand, and I need like a mascot. I need something for marketing." And so we started talking to them, and this is so early in their reinvention of who they are that they were still talking about pizza, and doing delivery. That was what their final straw on the camel's back that kind of made them all implode was they got out of their lane and they tried doing what Papa John's or Domino's do, and they didn't do what Little Caesars did. So they didn't have anything about a $5 hot and ready large pizza on their website. It was all hush hush secret stuff. We opened up and it was gangbusters. I mean, we were so fortunate with the first location. 16 months later, we opened up our second. We could have opened it sooner, but believe it or not, Little Caesar said, no, you're not a good operator. You don't get to open another one. So
Why
we're
would
like,
you
what
not
do
a
you mean
good
we're not a good
operator? What?
operator? We got crazy sales. And they're like, and I'm like, our bank account's growing. Like, here you go. And they're like, yeah, but your food, paper, and labor are way out of whack. You're surviving because of the volume that you have, and you have enormously cheap rent. And you're going to come through a downturn at some point. And if you're running your business the way you are, you won't be around. So we don't want you to fail with one. We're sure as heck not going to let you fail with two, four, or five. So it took about 8 months for my brother and I to become really good operators, and we wanted to open that second location. We needed to, right? I mean, I
Mhm,
didn't pay myself a salary for 2 years,
mhm.
until we opened up that second one. So um, we just became good operators, and it was because of that pressure. Where again, if we were an independent, non-franchise, who's telling me I'm a bad operator? My bank account's growing. I mean,
Right.
I think he polled most Americans, like, is the bank account growing? Yeah, you're doing good, right? So they gave us some discipline that we didn't have and some understanding about operations, and I'm super appreciative of that.
Yeah, I was
Um,
gonna ask you if you actually appreciate the fact that they slowed you down and pointed
oh,
out.
I was angry as all get up at the time, but it took noticing that the bank account got bigger and faster and bigger. Once we changed some of their from we took some of their suggestions and started implementing them, and we could tell a huge difference. So yeah, it didn't take very long for me to realize that I had been blessed with someone saying you need to do a little different if you want to be really successful. So
Right. That's great. And it is true. A lot of people think that it's franchisors against franchisees, but the reality, one of the things that I love about the franchise world is that if the franchisees do well, the franchisor does well. From my perspective, is it's a win-win, and if it's not a win-win, it will become a lose-lose. And one of the things that I work on, with franchisees is like they really are your allies. They really want you to do well. Listen to them. They have created this brand that has done amazing things and is proven, and follow their lead, and you have ideas, then build a relationship with them, get on their boards and advisory boards, but at the end of the day, they want you to win. And a lot of times especially the ones that are legacy brands that have been around for a little while, they've seen the history, so they give you that guidance, and it would be in your best interest to actually listen to it. So that's great that they give you that discipline, that little pause. And so how many little sisters did you end up with?
we got up to five, and it was a it was a game for everyone. No one was gamifying it and making it like not fair or whatever. But we didn't have a lot of net worth, so every time we opened a store, that really set us back financially. We had to save that, and we were doing debt financing. At the same time, Little Caesars was doing just an amazing job selling franchises. So by the time we got to store number five, there was really no other geographic area to open up. We could have opened up way over here, but in restaurant management, you've got to get to that on a regular basis. It can't be once a month kind of thing. So we paused with that brand, but we held on to it for another 15 years. I mean, we just exited in 21 at the end of the year. Um, and we started looking at other concepts that were in the area that we could add that weren't in competition with it. So we went into Valpak because we thought Valpak could actually help ourselves with Little Caesars. And through that, we got into both Sport Clip haircuts and Oxy Fresh carpet cleaning, dealing with salon owners and carpet cleaner owners, and realizing that those two industries had high margins and not the most competent independent operators. So I was like, well, if I'm a good operator and I understand how to do marketing, I'm going to win every time against the average person in that industry. And that's been the case. Most people don't understand either recruiting or marketing, or they don't understand um, just how to manage people, right? So we learned those things, and we've been really successful.
Yeah, and I assume sports clips, obviously very little cost of goods. I mean, supplies is not going to be very much with the
Yeah,
fabric coming in.
your labor is your biggest thing, and then
Right,
typically your rent is a second. And we do sell a lot of product, um, but that is it still has a decent margin on it, but it's ancillary. It's you add on to it. Very few people walk in to buy just product.
right.
It's normally got a service that they pay for attached to it. So it's just an opportunity to raise that top dollar amount and have more of a contribution to the bottom.
Right. And do you stay in the nearby market? Because you mentioned that one of the challenges of Little Caesars of not being able to grow, because you wanted to grow an enterprise, and now I'm sure you're on your way to build an empire at this point.
Well,
So, mhm.
we've got salons in 5 states, and while I'm actively talking to either managers or area managers, there are some locations it's been well over a year, maybe 18 months to 2 years since I physically stepped in on. And there's two parts of that. One, we're cutting hair, and the state cosmetology board and all of our employees are already licensed and understand the importance of having a clean salon, right? For health reasons. The second thing is no one's eating anything we're making, so we don't have that worry of poison and contaminating. And the third thing is compared to a restaurant, salons are so data rich that I can dial in and I can see the performance of every single stylist. I can see what their customer review satisfaction score is. I can see what their time of a haircut is. I can see how much retail they sell. So it's a matter of having competent and well-trained area managers and managers that then can coach the other team members. And so I can coach those two levels remotely, and then they coach in person. But the data allows me to see everything and pay attention to what I should be talking about with them. And we talk about this all the time. It's like if you want something improved, just start talking about it. You don't even have to put pressure on them. You don't even have to set really good expectations, although I would highly recommend that. As soon as your team starts noticing something, they're going to want to improve it just naturally. It's just human nature.
You know what? And that is so critical. A lot of the times, I believe franchisees do not share enough information with their team. They want to, hide the information, not share, but the reality is that the more that you share that information, the more that people understand what they're doing. It opens their eyes that, look, I'm not just cutting hair. I'm here as a manager, as a unit manager. I'm running a business. And
Yeah.
the moment that they realize that the way that they approach the business, the way they approach what they do every day, and changes. It's a different perspective. And if you share that information, it's amazing. And by the way, I realize you're back into technology, Jesse, because all of these now, you have a technology back in your hand. All the reporting is technology.
Oh yeah.
And so it's technology has definitely revolutionized how a franchisee can manage the business, especially as it's growing. Obviously, when you still want to have 1, 2, 3 units, you're still hands-on, you're still there, very involved. But as you grow into a district manager area, or even better, multi district manager areas, then now you can actually achieve that time and financial freedom, and use technology to help you still oversee your business
Yeah.
successfully.
I would say this to anyone that's listening that is fearful of having team members understand what a true P&L looks like for their business, whatever. I'll just say this. There are two types of people on our planet. Both are amazing types, but there are people that are batteries included and batteries not included. And if you're a business owner, most likely you're a battery included. And that's why you want to do that. And almost all of our team members are batteries not included. And that's fine, but it's only the batteries included they're going to want to start their own business. And I got news for you. If you found someone that's batteries included, they're going to do what they're going to do on their own. That's their destiny anyway. So better be their friend and ally and develop them than to treat them like a mushroom.
100%. I don't know how much you know about my history, but I started a Domino's Pizza, by the way,
Okay.
37 years ago, delivering pizzas. And one of the things that kept me in that, because that was a temporary job, one of the things that kept me in the business was I was in a corporate store, and they literally had the profit and loss statement for the prior month taped to the door of the manager. So as a pizza delivery driver, I could actually read the P&L. And it's one of the things that fascinated me, the access to knowledge and information that kept me in that brand, by the way, for 20 years. So absolutely, knowledge. I support and agree that the more that you teach your people, the more that they're going to appreciate and then understand what they're doing every day. And it's not
It,
just the business, it's not just the customer service, but really it's a business. So I love that. Very, very good. So so you obviously went from Little Caesars, and now you are doing all these you're Mumbo, multi-unit, multi-brand franchisee. And what has been the biggest surprise for you in this journey? What has been the things that really, when from the time you began to where you are now, that really surprised you about, the franchise business?
I, you know, number one, you're going to find the top performers in every brand seem to really are really available to mentor. That's one thing that I've noticed in franchising is your top 10 franchisees are probably the ones willing to talk the most to other franchisees to just give them advice. I mean, I've got some friends that own a lot of competing salons in a different market, and I spent an hour with them on Zoom showing them how I do my recruitment. And they're like, wow, we never thought of doing it that way. Okay, great. Take it and do something with it. And I'm good friends with their father, and we both share best practices, and we both laugh. It's like nothing we're doing is like top secret knowledge. It's about execution. And, if you can't execute, what's the point, right? So if you're going to execute, you're going to figure it out anyway. So again, why not have that person be your friend and share best practices?
Yeah, you know what? You're here. You accepted to be in this podcast, which is focused on being able to share your experience, your best practices, your tips, your ideas with other fellow franchisees. And I have had the same experience. Any franchisee that I met is just more than willing to share. The challenge they have is time. They just
Mhm.
don't have that much time to give, but whenever they do have it, then they actually do, which is one of the benefits, I think, of going to conferences, don't you think? Because in
Oh, yeah.
there, you're there to network, to share. So if people go to conferences and they ask questions and they learn, don't you think that's a value on that?
Yeah, absolutely a value. And we've met in person at the multi-unit franchise conference, which if you're a franchisee, that is the conference to go to. I'd also recommend the IFA conference, even if you are a franchisee. I go to that. The content for the franchisee side is growing exponentially every year with the International Franchise Association too.
Yeah, absolutely. I usually recommend for franchisees, two conferences. I say go to your franchisor, your brand conference for sure. No
Mhm.
matter what, you have to go there, build a network, build relationships with your franchisor and fellow franchisees. And I talk about the multi-unit conference too, but I'm starting to actually recommend the IFA too, because I think they have definitely created a much bigger focus on franchisee content, like you said. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, that's really great. Okay, so we talked about the biggest surprise. So now tell me about the biggest challenge. What has been the biggest pain that you have gone through as you're growing this business?
Yeah, no, I can tell you, I'm trying to talk about this in a positive way, not a negative way.
Hmm.
Um, because franchising allows you to have so many things systemized, you're not working necessarily as hard. You're just having to continue to do the process. So what I see franchisees that are having success. They're not having wild success, but they're having success, and you can see where they're struggling. But the units are just so damn profitable, they don't want to sell. And I want to keep buying them. Or if they do want to sell, they have unrealistic expectations because it's like, I'm not working hard. Why would I sell it? I'm making money. So I would say in a more of a mature brand, you're looking at acquisitions versus ground up building out new locations. And so my biggest frustration is I would own three times the sport clips I own right now if the units were available already for me to buy at a reasonable price. That would be my biggest frustration. My frustration is I can't grow fast enough. I've got I've got the bench deep enough, and I've got the systems internally that, just to give you an example, if we doubled the number of sport clips overnight, that would require me to have four more relationships, and my brother, who handles more of the back office, for him to have one more relationship as far as employees that are direct response to us, right? I'd have four more district managers, and he'd have one more office personnel for him. That's it. To double the number of employees, to double the number of locations. That's all we need. And so we're just kind of waiting for that thing to happen. And I'm really optimistic about it too, because we're in a wonderful time right now. So if you are a Gen X or a millennial, the boomers are starting to retire. A lot of them don't have children that want the business or not even have children, or they've diversified. And so they're in 3 brands, like I'm in several brands. And there's a brand that the children don't have an interest in, but they're profitable. The parents like it, but it's time for the parents to retire. And the other thing too is like my generation, I think it's 50-50 that they think 65 is retirement. I have no date for retirement because I love what I do. It doesn't, I mean, I could probably work at half my mental capacity and still do this. I just, because I've learned always have other people, especially younger people around you helping out. So I've already figured that out. When I'm 80 and I'm not as quick and bright as I am right now, I'll have someone that's probably been with me for 10 years. They're 38, started at 28. They're very competent, good trust. They can handle a lot of the day-to-day things while I just continue to look, sniff out deals and mentor people. So what I'm saying about that is, because a lot of the boomers think 65 is retirement, even though they could probably run the business for another 10 years. In their mind, that's what they've internalized, that that's time for me to settle down and just enjoy life. I'm trying to enjoy life right now. I don't know when the curtain call is for me. So I'm like, I'm trying to enjoy it now. But I can grow and not have to add a lot of people or do a lot more work. And
And you
so,
said that there's a great opportunity at this moment in time
yeah,
because of those
if you
aging.
get in now and you get your feet wet and you get your 10,000 hours in to be genius level at whatever brand you're in, there will be, no matter what, there will be people needing to sell. If the brand's been around for 20 plus years, you're going to have enough older franchisees, because most franchisees get in around their 40s.
Right.
So give them 20 years, now they're in their 60s. And that's kind of where they're thinking about their retirement. So, I'm 48. I'm not looking at retirement anytime soon. In fact, I'm probably on that age where this is where people start their first or second or third location, right? But even if you get in your first, second, or third location, there's 5, 6, 10 unit pickups that are going to come your way in the next 3 to 5 years, just because people do want to retire.
Yeah, especially if you're a good operator, even the franchisor will tell you about those
Oh,
opportunities
yeah.
because they'll hear about it first. So if you get in and you become a good operator, you follow the brand the way it's supposed to be, you learn about implementing your systems and your processes, your procedures, you hire great people, and your franchisor will look at that and they will be paying attention. And then the opportunities come, they will come to you, especially if they are in your market or near you, so that you take them over rather than some outsider that is new, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm very bullish on the future. My frustration is I'd like the future to get here a little quicker.
Yeah. So okay, so if anybody out there, if anybody from the sports clips world is looking to sell, and you are in what markets are you looking for, Jesse? Let's put a pitch.
I love anything that's not high rent. So keep me out of California and the East Coast. And other than that, I'm pretty open.
Oh wow, so as long as it's some sort of a package, because at least you know that you got to have at least a district manager area, right?
Yeah. So
Otherwise
I
it'll
need
be.
I need at least 5 units of something to justify the financial admin cost of someone that's gonna be someone that could grow that market out.
Yeah, exactly. So I always say it's as a minimum of 8 district manager area, and then from then on you can add. So, all right, so there you go. So you can reach out to Jesse for any opportunities like that. There you go, Jesse. Hopefully you'll
All
get
right.
something out of that. For sure. So tell me, so we talked about the biggest challenge, right, is in not being able to grow fast enough, and that's, you got to find the right opportunities. When you're looking for a new acquisition or opening, what are the metrics you're looking at to get? Because I'm sure there might be offers that might come to you and you said, well, they're out of they're out of the range of what they should be asking for. What are you looking for? Let's say, like, other franchisees will be listening to this saying, okay, what do I need to look for to make a decision to acquire something or to open something in that market? What are the things that you, with your experience, are looking for when you're making that decision?
So my opinion on this, I've got friends that have way more units than me and are way more successful than me. Our opinions vary just a little bit on that number. I think if I can get any units purchased at 3.5 times earnings, that's a great deal for me, and I think it's a pretty good deal for them. If it's a great opportunity, then I'll move up into the 4.5, but 5 times is kind of my top end on that. Probably Yeah, I would say 5 times. Now I've got friends that do 6, 7, 8 times, but those have to be really unique situations because you can't. What will happen if you're a decent operator is the sales won't change, but it could you may have to wait a while. You may have to go a year or 18 months before you can have massive change sales wise and customer count, just depending on the brand, the market, who owned it before. Um,
I was
you
gonna
know,
say because there are some that are underperforming units because the operator is not a good operator.
well, that's the thing, and it's not just have they upset the client base, have they made it so no one wants to work there? And so, like in the salon business,
Great
I've got a
point.
finite
Great
number
point.
of people I can hire because they have to be licensed. And salon jobs are typically not something that people move from one state to another, right? So you've got a geographic area, you're locked into that percentage. If if a majority of people have worked already there because you had high turnover and they weren't treated well,
Mm.
it's still the same name on the store, even though it's a different owner. People are just, whatever. Um, and I get that. So it takes a little consistency. You've got to have that wherewithal. So I would never, if someone was a terrible, terrible operator, I would still buy their stores, but it would have to be a much lower multiple than that, closer to 5 or higher. Just because of, forgive me for saying this, but it's like feeding the pig, right? Because it's gonna keep losing money for a while I figure out how do I change the reputation in this, right?
Yeah, I
But
was gonna ask you. So, would you, because if you're doing multiple of EBITDA, I assume you are talking about. So, what if it's not a profitable unit? Would you not look at as something that is not profitable?
I can tell you that before the pandemic, I was happily buying non-cash flow assets. Since the pandemic, you got to have some kind of net positive cash flow. I'm not taking on your sick children only to find out that they're really sick children. Like, and I'm a good operator. But I've closed locations in multiple brands because I built them too close to someone else. They were operationally good. I built it too close to the same brand. And so we were splitting our customers in half. And as soon as I closed that one, almost all those customers went right over to my other one, and that was just testament that I built it too damn close. Really, my fault, not the franchiser's fault. I picked the location, not them. But sometimes locations just aren't meant to be whatever they're supposed to be, and I don't want to pay a whole lot of money to figure that one out.
Yeah, and being a larger franchisee allows you to really look at your business objectively, notice, okay, I made a mistake. The way to correct it is to simply close or relocate,
Uh-huh.
and you do it. And when it's one out of, 20 units, it's not that big of a deal. But when franchisees are starting up and they made that type of mistakes and they have one, two, 3 units, closing one is such a difficult decision. And yet they still need to look at it objective. They still need to, otherwise, because you can't really fix that, right? If you made it the wrong choice, you have to make a decision. And if you continue to grow, eventually you realize it's the right thing. But at the beginning, sometimes people don't do that. They just keep fighting for it, right? Because that's it's one out of three. And so that will becomes a problem. So for sure. So tell me, what of all this journey, what has been, things that what kind of things do you enjoy about what you do? Like, obviously, you've been doing it for a while now, and you don't have an end in mind yet. So what is it why do you enjoy this so much? Or do you
As I get,
enjoy it? First of all, let me
yeah.
not assume.
Oh yeah, no, I very enjoy it. Franchising is a relationship business on so many different levels. And as I get older, probably one of the most important things to me are having good quality relationships. And that could be, it's not necessarily with the type of businesses I'm in. I don't have relationships with my customers because they come in once every 6 weeks or 8 weeks for a haircut. And if I've got a salon group in Michigan, I'm up there maybe 2 or 3 times a year. There's just no way for that. But the managers in particular, I like and love developing them, watching them grow, watching them celebrate success. We would always start our meetings with a positive focus, right? And I did this intentionally because they knew that they were going to have to get in front of the group and talk about something that's positive that happened to them, either professionally or personally, since we had our last meeting. So now I've got, let's say, a group of 10 managers coming to a meeting, and they're driving. They're like, oh my God, Jesse's going to ask me what my positive focus is. So they're thinking about this. So the entire drive there, they're thinking about what's working, what's good, what are they excited about. their mindset walking in and to start that meeting, wonderful, right? But what I noticed, and I would pay attention, it was great. Like after a while, and they started getting developed, they started making more money, and their positive focus was they bought a brand new car. And maybe it wasn't a brand new car, but it was a new car to them, and it was probably still a newer car than what I drive. And just hearing them, I bought my house. I took a loan against my 401k that I have with the company, and was able to pay for my down payment for my house. I'm a homeowner. My parents never owned a home, kind of thing. I really love those kind of things, and I love that people trust me with content that they know is not meant to harm them, and that they know that I'm going to make a decision that I will always weigh in the best outcome for them as well. I like that type of relationship. It's relationships are like bank accounts, and I'm not really interested in ever withdrawing. I just want to make deposits and look at that bank account get big, and just know that if I'm in some dire straits, I've got lots of friends, not just employees, but I've got lots of friends that I know would bail me out. Either pep talk me, loan me money, work out a deal and go into business with me. Like I've got so many opportunities because I've invested in relationships.
I love that. Really like that. Awesome. Okay, so in closing, give me, if you can give me 2 or 3 tips, like business tips that you give a franchisee that, is going, they're starting and growing their multi-unit organization. They're just beginning their 3 to 4, 5 units, and they want to get to that 20, 30, 50 unit, what will be the 2 or 3 tips that you will give them to consider as they're going through the process?
Well, I've got two strong ones for sure. The first one is I believe very much in the dimming process. So the dimming process is the first 15% of any activity determines 85% of the outcome. So for what that means to me is how do we recruit, how do we onboard, and how do we train every single team member in our company? Okay. If you focus all your energy on that first 90 days that someone's with you, you're probably going to have them for 9 months, 9 years, depending on your industry. So I would say spend all your energy as far as like training, developing, managing the very beginning of the process. Okay. So if you have a 4-year veteran with you and you promote him to be a manager, spend 90 days with them as a manager, getting them set up, and you'll have them for a manager for as long as you want them, probably. People leave because they don't feel like they're doing a good job, whether you're telling them that or they feel that, right? And then the other thing that it's a little bit more nuanced, but I believe so firmly in it. And I tell everyone on my team that I'm coaching, I said, if you got a problem, I want you to spend 90% of your energy and time figuring out what the right question is. Because if you work on the quality of the question, you get a better quality answer. And many times the answer is so blatantly obvious to you once you ask the right question. And I was just actually talking to my brother about that on the flight back from Atlanta yesterday. I said, unintentionally, what that's created in my culture? I get to ask lots of questions to my team, and they don't think I'm questioning their competence or their ability, right? They just know that it's the question, not the answer. He's worried about the question. Is he asking the right question? So then the answers come out, right? But when they're coaching, like when a district manager is teaching or coaching a manager, I was like, you gotta get that person you gotta ask that person some questions and be quiet. Make it tough for them to answer the question. Not questions like I gotcha. That's not what that's about. It's more like, well, okay, if we can't do that, what are other options? Sit back, don't spoon feed it to them, right? Get them thinking, because once they internalize it, they own it, and it's probably going to be executed better too. But yeah, quality of the question, 90%, 10% on the answer.
Oh, I love that. So, so, so good. So you have right now 33 units. What's your goal? Where do you want to be? How big do you want to get?
Oh, I am all about the bottom line in revenue, right? Just cash to fund other projects. And so I've never been hung up on the number of units. I've always been more concerned about the cash flow. And as an example, I mean, um, I've got friends in the same industries or same brands I'm in, and there are some that have fewer locations than I have, and they're making as much as I am. And there's lots of guys and girls that have more locations than me, and I'm making more than them. And it's just because the unit economics are ran a little bit differently. So that would be my advice. Don't get hung up on number of locations, because what I can tell you is, as I stand with you right here, August of 2024, I do not have an unprofitable, a non-cash flowing location, period.
That's
Right?
amazing. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
And so from that, that's my baseline. So every time I can make incremental increases, it's more money. If I add another location, got to make sure it's successful, because I don't want to change that. Right. And now, it's not to say that you don't make risks, and sometimes they don't pan out. Like I said, I've closed locations, but every time I close a location, it wasn't because I picked a bad location. It's because I built it too damn close to my other locations. And I did the reoccurring tenant thing, and the distance was fine. It was that market doesn't support as many of that brand that this other market does for whatever reason. So I would also say, and I made that mistake. I signed like 4 leases and had them all like I signed 4 leases in the same month, but had the possession dates staggered every 2 or 3 months, so I could build it, get it open, build it, get it open. But I locked everyone else out of that market, and that was great for me. But after I was opening up the fourth one in that market, I knew it wasn't going to open good. Like the day of the open, I'm like, this is going to be a terrible opening. I'm like, it opened up just like the other one. It's too close. And that's what it was. And then 6, 7 years later, when the lease was up, closed it, moved all the team members over to another close location. And like 85+% of the customers followed over. So it killed
That
my overhead in half and made almost twice as much money.
That's it. Cash flow. Yeah, no, definitely. So let me just finish with saying that, you happen to be one of our clients here at the
Mhm.
American Franchise Academy. And I wanted to ask you, how do you find us, and why did you decide to invest in one of our educational programs for district managers for your team?
So, how I found you? Maybe it was an email. I get emails from the IFA and multi-unit and all the other conferences, and it might have been that. You might have showed up in my social media feed, something like that. I don't remember where it showed up. What it was is, um, I wanted to see how good I was. And so I wanted to take my district managers and throw them up against your class and see if there was like, wow, why didn't you teach me that? Or like, hey, everything she said, you've been telling me that. And now someone else told me that. So it's got to be true, you know? And I'm thankful that they got to learn new ways to approach the same mindset, right? So the mindset was already set there. We got a good mindset in our team, but the tools that we could give them. And like one thing that, funny enough, when I first had my very first area manager, I was like, I got to pretend this person doesn't know anything. And so I got to spell everything out. So I made a checklist, and every time they walked in the store, they had to go through the checklist, and then they had to turn it into me. And with one area manager, I was like, I have time for this now. So we got away from that. And that's one of the things you talk about, is having a checklist. So we're implementing a new checklist. It's updated because it's been 10 years and so many things are different in the store now, that we've got to plus and minus some of that stuff. But that would be a great example where I originally had that thought, I implemented it, worked well, but then I outgrew it thinking that. And then I had to get back to being brilliant at the basics. And that was one of the things that your program did, is made everyone realize we've got to be brilliant at the basics still. Like we can handle all these high tech or more complicated HR things that other teams might not be able to handle, but we got to also be brilliant at the basics. And that's when you walk into a salon, maybe Susie's in the back crying because her boyfriend broke up with her. Credit card terminals aren't working. There's 10 people waiting for haircuts, and you've come in just to do an observation and coach the manager. Well, you have all these other things that took all your priorities now, and you dealt with those because those were fires burning in the store, and you totally forgot the whole purpose why you drove 2 hours to go to that location. So that's a great reason why the checklist is important, and having it, and then having someone else say, "Hey, thanks for sending me the checklist. This is all good." Accountability, checks and balances.
Yeah, no, love that. One of the things that we found, and I've been in the industry for 37 years, myself, and one of the things that we know is that there really isn't any formal district manager training out there. So how do you know what to teach them? How do you figure out what were the things that they needed to know? Because most district managers were promoted from the unit manager level,
Hmm.
and the unit manager job is completely different
Sure.
to that of a district manager job. So how do you determine what they needed to do to be an effective district manager?
So at this point now, and I feel like I've got a rock star group of district managers. You've met them all, and they all have different walks of life. Like they're not the same personalities. They don't have the same job experience, but they all perform very similar. And part of it is, so the last 4 years, I haven't interviewed any of my district managers. I've made all the current district managers do all the interviews, and then I'd say, should I hire this person or not? And of course, then I'll meet them and say, okay, do I have a good vibe about this person? But we have a culture that, the area managers work as a team, even though they're in separate states and they hardly ever see each other other than in Zoom. They know they can call each other and say, hey, I've got this issue. Do you have this issue? Right. The other thing is they all think I'm super busy and I'm not. I'm here to take phone calls, but they'll call each other before they call me, not because they're afraid of me, but they just think I'm busy, right? But they're a self-managing autonomous group and they hold each other accountable. What we do is we get together for 30 minutes every Friday morning around 11 Central Time, and we have a 30-minute Zoom call. 80% of it is they have to get in front of everyone else and tell us what their wins for the week were. That's it. I celebrate wins. And some weeks we have a lot of wins. Some weeks we don't have a lot of wins. If you give me a couple weeks where you don't have a lot of wins, you already know you're not doing a good job. So you got to start finding and making those wins happen, right? But that's it. I don't have to give them a lot of direction. I give them updates, right? But we're kind of a self-managing autonomous team. We just hold each other accountable. Iron sharpens iron kind of thing. So what do I teach them? Get back to your question.
I mean, at some point in time, were
I
you the
teach them to
district
be a
manager and you figured it out and then you shared that with them?
I teach them to be a business owner because I don't know anything else, right?
Mm.
So, yeah, I teach them to try to have the same temperament that a business owner should have, which is completely different than what a store manager or an employee would have. So that's the biggest. And I always I say this. I said the skills that get you out of Egypt are not the same skills that get you to the promised land, right? So I'm like, the skills you had got you to this position, but those are not the skills that keep you in your position. So now you need to learn some other things. And I had that conversation before I hire or promote anyone, and we make that agreement, right? But I teach them to be an owner. And it's funny because when we go to our national conferences, or when I brought my area managers, because I had one of them speak at the panel at the multi-unit conference, when other owners were chatting with my area managers, they're like, they're really good. And I was like, you think? I'm like, I know they are, but I don't. They're like children, right? Someone's gonna be like, your kid's a genius. I'm like, you think? I'm like, I just watched them be really dumb the other day. Same kind of
Yes.
thing with my team. They are geniuses. They are good, but sometimes it takes another person to remind me of that, right? Because we're all human. We do make mistakes once in a while. But yeah, I teach them to be business owners and make decisions like a business owner. And what the subsequent result of that is, I don't get a lot of phone calls. A lot of the decisions are being made, and 90% or more are exactly the way I would have handled that situation. So I don't have an automated business by any means, but I don't have, it's got autopilot where I can let it go weeks without any major corrective things. And even when the major corrective things are just talking about getting refocused on something. That's
Yeah.
it.
I love that. I love that. So you teach your district managers to be business owners, to run it like an owner, and that actually dictates or guides their thinking and the decision making. I love that.
I mean, I
Well,
don't. They're all on salary. I don't track their hours. I don't track any of that. It's a lot of their compensation is based on growth and productivity, right? And if you're not doing it, then I'm not going to pay you well. And if you're doing it well, you're going to get paid really well. And so that's the other thing too. If I'm going to teach them to be like a business owner, they need to also learn to manage their time, right? Don't get burnout. Don't work too much. But also, you may have to take a phone call Friday night at 7 p.m. You may have to. And so just be aware of that. So we have another hard rule that if you are on vacation, you have to be on vacation. You cannot take phone calls. Take my phone call because I may have hey, something's on fire and you're the only one that knows where the fire extinguisher is kind of question. But other than that, we really try to make sure that they are getting real time off, even if it's a stay at home staycation. Like, I need you to know that we can function without you. And as soon as they know that, then a lot of pressure comes off their shoulders. They don't burn out as much.
oh, I love that. That's fantastic. Well, I've taken a lot of time from you, Jesse, today. Thank you very much. It's been an
Absolutely.
amazing. What?
Sounds good. And I'm sure I'm going to probably see you at the multi-unit or the IFA first
Absolutely.
of the year. So
Yes.
let's make a point to say hi to each other, okay?
Yes, for sure. So thank you very much for everything, all your tips, your best practices, your guidance. I think that the people in the audience will really appreciate it. So thank you, Jesse, very much for today.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow, what an amazing journey Jesse has gone through, and what great tips and best practices he has shared with all of you. Thank you for being in this Franchisee Wisdom podcast again, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.